My parents handed me a lawsuit demanding $350,000 for the crime of being born. I smiled at them across the table. I'd been keeping receipts too. The spreadsheet had a line item for diapers, not metaphorically, not as some abstract category of early childhood expense. An actual line. Infant hygiene products, 1991-1993, $2,400. Below it, food expenses, age, 0-18, $45,000. Below that, room and board, inclusive of utilities, maintenance, and occupancy, $120,000. And at the very bottom, my personal favorite, emotional wear and tear, $114,500. They had billed me for existing in their house while I was a child. They had had this number, $350,000 total, stamped by a real law firm on letterhead I recognized because it was the same building where I'd interviewed for my first post-grad job 12 years ago. And they had put it in a folder and set it on the kitchen table between 2 cups of tea, and they had waited for me to arrive. No dinner, no smell of food, no how was your week, Elena, just the folder and the cold, organized certainty of people who had decided this was the move. I picked up the document. I read every line. I looked up at my parents. My mother with her hands folded and her mouth pressed into the particular configuration she used when she had made a decision and considered it final. My father with the slightly defensive posture of a man who knows a thing is wrong but has committed to it anyway, and I felt something happen in my chest that I can only describe as a door closing. Not a slam, a soft, deliberate click, the sound of something that will not be opened again. I smiled at them. My mother flinched. Fine, I said. I hope you hired a good lawyer. I put the folder in my bag, stood up, said goodbye, and drove to my apartment, where I opened the second drawer of my filing cabinet and sat on the floor for 3 hours going through 10 years of paperwork. Then I called Mr. Vance. Let me tell you who I am, because none of this makes sense without that context. My name is Elena Marsh. I am 33 years old. I am a director at a mid-sized financial consulting firm, which means I spend my days doing the kind of rigorous, detail-oriented work that requires keeping very good records and knowing exactly how money moves from one place to another. I am, professionally and constitutionally, a person who documents things. It is not a skill I developed for any particular reason. It is simply how I am built. I write things down. I keep receipts. I maintain spreadsheets that my friends find alarming and my accountant finds deeply satisfying. This habit, over the course of my adult life, had produced 3 thick, color-coded ledgers that I kept in the second drawer of my filing cabinet under a label that said Family, Financial. I had never expected to use them for anything except my own peace of mind, the reassurance of a person who has learned the hard way that promises without documentation are only promises. I had learned this lesson from my parents. My parents, Arthur and Diane Marsh, are the kind of people who are very good at needing things. This is not a character flaw in the dramatic sense. It is a personality orientation, a specific way of moving through the world that has probably served evolutionary purposes. My mother can communicate financial distress with her body language alone, a particular combination of the shoulders and the eyes that produces, in the people who love her, an involuntary response to help. My father has the voice of a man in over his head, reasonable and slightly afraid, that activates something protective in people who hear it. They had activated it in me, reliably, for 10 years. Let me tell you about those 10 years. 7 years before the folder on the kitchen table, my father lost his job. I was 26, 2 years into my first real position, building something with very little cushion. He called me on a Thursday evening with the voice, the specific, capsizing voice, and told me they were going to lose the house if they couldn't cover the mortgage, and that the bank had given them a 60-day notice. He and my mother cried. They cried together on a phone call with me, the specific dual crying of 2 people who have made a decision to be vulnerable simultaneously. And I sat at my kitchen table and felt the involuntary, helpless pull of someone who cannot watch her parents drown. I took over the mortgage. I set up a direct payment from my account. I told them it was temporary, just until Dad found work, just to bridge the gap. And they told me they would pay me back every cent the moment they were stable. He found work 5 years ago, a solid position, steady salary, benefits. He never mentioned repayment, neither did she. I waited a year before bringing it up carefully over dinner. And my mother said, "We're still getting back on our feet, Elena. You know how it is." I wrote it down in my ledger, continued paying the mortgage, filed it under outstanding. 3 years before the folder, Chloe needed a car. Chloe is my sister, 3 years younger, the one who had been, since we were children, the center of gravity in our family. Not because she demanded it, because my parents organized themselves around her the way planets organize around a sun, and I had been, for as long as I could remember, a moon in the outer orbit, valued primarily for what I could reflect. Chloe needed a car. She had found one. A decent sedan, nothing extravagant. And the dealer required a cosigner with strong credit and a down payment of $8,000. My parents asked if I would cosign and contribute the down payment. They promised to cover every monthly installment. I knew, at the moment they asked, that this would probably not work out the way they were describing. I knew this the way you know a weather prediction is likely, but not guaranteed. I did it anyway, because Chloe needed a car, and I had the means, and they were my family. They covered 3 installments, then they stopped. I watched the alerts come through on my credit account for 2 months before accepting that they stopped was not a temporary status, but a permanent one. I paid off the vehicle in in full, $45,000 total, down payment included. I wrote it in the ledger, filed it, said nothing. Then, 4 years before the folder, my mother called me crying at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night. She had chest pains. She had been to the doctor. They thought it might be serious, possibly the aortic valve, possibly surgical. They were running tests. The insurance had refused to pre-authorize the procedure. She was frightened. My father was frightened. They didn't know what to do. I liquidated my stock options. I transferred $80,000 to my parents' account in 2 wire transfers. I told my mother, use whatever you need, the rest goes back when you're okay. She called me the following week to say the surgery had gone well, recovery was progressing, she was feeling better. I asked which hospital. She said St. Catherine's, which I noted and later looked up, and which had no record of a cardiac procedure or patient admission under her name on or around that date. 6 months after the transfer, a mutual friend sent me a Facebook link. My parents, my sister, a luxury cruise through the Bahamas, my mother in sunglasses on a deck chair, glowing, not the glowing of a woman recovering from heart surgery, but the glowing of a woman on vacation. I looked at those photographs for a long time. I made a note in the ledger. I did not confront them. I want to be honest about this because it is the part that requires the most explanation. I did not confront them. I documented it. I grieved it quietly. I continued existing in a relationship with my parents that had been built on a foundation I now understood to be hollow, and I told myself, with the specific self-protective logic of someone who is not yet ready to name what they know, that I was waiting for the right moment. The right moment arrived when they put a spreadsheet on the kitchen table and charged me for diapers. The second escalation loop started about a year before the folder, which I tell you because the pattern leading up to it matters. About a year prior, Chloe bought a house. She and her husband Marcus had found a place in the suburbs. Nice neighborhood, good schools, the kind of house that costs more than its assessed value because of what surrounds it. She was overextended on the purchase, which I knew because my parents mentioned it with the particular tone they used when building a case. I was doing well. My portfolio had performed. There were hints, not direct requests, hints that I might want to contribute to Chloe's stability. I said I couldn't at that time, which was true in the sense that I had decided not to, and decisions about one's own money are always true. My mother was quiet on the phone for a moment. Family takes care of family, Elena. I know, I said. Chloe would do it for you. I let that sit without responding because the evidence available suggested otherwise, and arguing about it would not change anything. I hung up. I opened my laptop. I scanned the 3 ledgers and converted them to PDFs and saved them in a folder I labeled if necessary. It became necessary 6 months later when Chloe's house began the foreclosure process, and my parents decided that my refusal to intervene constituted a debt they were owed, and they hired a law firm to formalize that position. I want to linger on this moment because I think it deserves attention. They had paid an actual attorney to stamp a spreadsheet that included a line item for emotional wear and tear and another for infant hygiene products. And they had invited me to dinner without telling me what the dinner was. And they had placed this document in front of me with the expectation that I would see it and fold. They did not know about the second drawer. The morning after the folder, I arrived at the offices of Harmon & Vance at 9 o'clock sharp. Richard Vance has been the senior litigation partner at that firm for 23 years. He is the kind of attorney who is described in reviews and legal directories with words like relentless and meticulous, and not someone you want across the table from you, which is precisely why I had done my research before choosing him. I had made the appointment the night before. After spending 3 hours on my floor going through 10 years of paper, I sat across from him. He read the spreadsheet my parents had filed. He read it all the way through. Then he set it down and looked at me with the slight, incredulous expression of a man who has seen a great many things and has just seen something new. Then he laughed. They charged you for diapers, he said, an emotional wear and tear. He shook his head. A judge will throw this out inside 10 minutes. Their attorney will be sanctioned for filing this. This is not a lawsuit. This is a threat that got dressed up in legal language. I understand, I said. I'm not here to defend myself. I reached into my briefcase. I set 3 ledgers on his desk, color-coded, each one labeled by year and category. Each one cross-referenced with receipts, wire transfer confirmations, bank statements, and, for the most significant item, photographs from a hidden Facebook account showing 2 people on a luxury cruise in the Bahamas who had, 6 months prior, received $80,000 for emergency cardiac surgery. The thud when the ledgers hit the desk was satisfying in a way I had not anticipated. Vance looked at the top ledger. He opened it. He went quiet with the specific quality of quiet that happens when a lawyer encounters documentation that is better than they expected. Walk me through it, he said. I walked him through it. 7 years of mortgage payments on the family home, $140,000, documented by bank statements showing monthly transfers, matched against the mortgage servicing company's records, total amount calculated by their own payoff statement, the car, $45,000, documented by the original co-sign agreement, the down payment wire transfer, my credit account records showing the missed installments, and the final payoff statement, the surgery that did not happen, $80,000, documented by the wire transfer records, the Facebook photographs with dates and geolocation data, and a medical records request to St. Catherine's Hospital, which had confirmed and writing, no record of a cardiac procedure under my mother's name on or around the relevant dates. I paused before the last part. 6 months after I transferred the $80,000, I said, I found those photographs. I made a records request. I hired a private document examiner to look at the invoices my mother had provided to justify the medical expense. I slid a fourth document across the desk. The examiner's report. Vance looked at it. Fraudulent invoices. Yes, 2 of them. The hospital logos were pulled from their public website. The physician names were real. The signatures were not. He looked up slowly. The $45,000 for the car down payment. I traced the funds after the fact. The money I was told was for Chloe's car down payment was received in my parents' account and wire transferred to a third account 2 days later. I subpoenaed the destination account records. I paused. The money went to Chloe's personal checking account. She used it to lease a Porsche. Vance set the papers down. He pressed his fingers together. He had the expression of a man who has just been handed a project he finds genuinely interesting. Total, I said. With standard interest calculated over the relevant periods, they owe me $520,000. The smile that crossed his face was not a warm smile. It was the specific smile of a litigator contemplating a case that is both legally sound and personally satisfying. Fraud by false pretenses, breach of promise, criminal wire fraud. He tapped the ledger. The Porsche situation implicates your sister as a direct beneficiary of fraudulent funds. He looked at me. We file the countersuit tomorrow morning. I'll request an emergency asset freeze simultaneously. Their accounts, your father's retirement, the house. Everything tied to the relevant funds. I looked at him for a moment. Do it, I said. The freeze went through at 11:47 the following morning. My mother called me 21 times between noon and 3 o'clock. I know because my phone kept the log, which I noted because I document things. I answered on the 21st call. She was in a grocery store. I could hear a checkout scanner, voices, the ambient noise of a public space where someone is having a private crisis. Her voice had the specific quality of a person whose composure has just publicly failed. My card was declined, she said, not at a volume appropriate for a phone call. The bank said our accounts are frozen. Arthur's retirement is locked. What did you do to us? Did the process server not arrive yet? I said. My voice was completely level. You should be receiving my countersuit in the next few hours. The total is $520,000. A silence so long I checked to make sure the call was still connected. You're suing your own parents for $500,000? You said it yourself, I said. You need money to save Chloe. I need money to recover what you took from me using fraudulent invoices and false promises over a period of 10 years. I paused. It's only fair. We're just invoicing each other. You knew about the cruise? Her voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. I keep receipts too, Mom. I let that sit for a moment. Mine hold up in federal court. She hung up. I sat at my desk for a while. My hands were completely steady. I want to be precise about that because it surprised me. I had expected to feel something large and destabilizing, grief or rage or the specific heartbreak of doing the necessary thing to people you came from. What I felt instead was the particular stillness of someone who has been carrying something for a very long time and has finally set it down. 3 hours later, my phone rang again. Three-way call. Chloe's voice, when she came on the line, was not the voice I was used to hearing from my sister. The usual Chloe, confident, slightly impatient, accustomed to being the person things work out for, was not present. What was present was something stripped and high-pitched and afraid. Police came to my house. She was past the volume of indoor voice. I could hear her children somewhere in the background, which I noted with a specific pang that I filed separately from the rest of the conversation. They handed me a subpoena in front of my neighbors, in front of the entire street. Are you actually trying to frame me? I'm following the paper trail, I said. The $45,000 I was told was for your car down payment was wire transferred from my parents' account to yours 2 days after they received it from me. You used it for a Porsche lease. You are a documented direct beneficiary of funds obtained through fraudulent pretenses. I didn't know where it came from. They just said, I know what they said. I paused. I was there when they said it to me. A shift in the call. My mother's voice. Plaintive now. The composure entirely gone. We love you, sweetheart. We did it to protect you. Protect me? The audio actually clipped. You dragged me into a federal fraud case. I could go to prison. I could lose my kids over this. We were just trying to recover what Elena owed us. Don't you ever call me again. Chloe's voice had moved from panic to something colder. You fix this with her yourself, or I will testify against you to save myself. I will tell them everything I know. She hung up. The silence on the three-way call lasted for several seconds. My mother made a sound. My father said nothing. I waited. Then my father said very quietly, Elena, are you still there? Yes, please. The word came out in a way I had not heard from him before. Not the performing vulnerability he'd used for years, but something underneath it. The real version. Please, we can't. Your mother can't. She's on the floor, Elena. She can't catch her breath. I sat with that for a moment. There is something that happens when you hear your father cry, even after everything, even with 3 ledgers of documentation on your attorney's desk, even knowing what you know. There is something biological and ancient and deeply installed that responds to it. And I want to be honest that I felt it, that my jaw tightened and my chest did something, and I had to breathe carefully for a moment. Then I thought about the cruise photographs. My mother in sunglasses on a deck chair. 6 months after I had liquidated my stock options and sent her $80,000 for surgery that never happened. I breathed. You think dropping a frivolous lawsuit cancels out $500,000 of criminal fraud? I said. We don't have that money. He wept. You know we don't. I know you don't. I said, which is why I'm not asking for the money. Silence. I want the house. I heard him stop breathing. The house on Ferndale Street. The one I have been paying the mortgage on for 7 years. $140,000 of my money, Arthur. You will sign the deed to me by 5 o'clock tomorrow. You will vacate within 30 days. In exchange, I will direct Mr. Vance to drop the criminal charges. We'll be homeless, he whispered. I used the exact words they had handed me across that bare table 3 days ago, between 2 cups of tea. Sorry, Dad, I said, but I need to secure my financial future. I was standing in my apartment looking out the window at the street below. Thank you, Elena. A pause. Are you all right? It was the first time anyone had asked me that in 3 days, and I noticed the weight of the question landing somewhere it hadn't been expecting to land. I'll be okay, I said. That's a different answer. Yes, I said. I know. Vance had agreed to hold the criminal charges in suspension pending the property transfer and a formal acknowledgement of the fraudulent invoices, a document my parents signed, both of them, with their signatures notarized, in Victoria's conference room, in the presence of a witness, on a Thursday morning in November. My mother's hands shook when she signed. My father's did not, which I found somehow harder to look at. The lawsuit they had filed was dismissed with prejudice before it ever reached a hearing. Their attorney, a man named Gerald Finch, who I later discovered had filed it somewhat against his own professional judgment because they were longtime clients, sent a letter to Vance apologizing for what he characterized as a misunderstanding of the underlying facts. Vance showed me the letter. I declined to comment on it. Chloe, true to her word, provided a full written statement to my attorney detailing her knowledge of the financial arrangements, her receipt of the transferred funds, and her understanding of their source. She did this to protect herself from prosecution, which is a practical rather than a moral calculation, and I understood it as such. The statement was useful. I have not spoken to Chloe since. I want to tell you about the Chloe part because it is the most complicated piece and the one I think about most often when I am being honest with myself about this whole story. Chloe did not manufacture the crisis. She did not create the dynamic that made me the family ATM for 10 years. She did not forge the medical invoices or make the calls asking for money or sit across a kitchen table and present a spreadsheet charging for diapers. She was, in many ways, as much a product of our family's architecture as I was, the one who was centered and given things, which is its own kind of damage, the damage of never having been required to develop the muscles that come from not being given things. I have talked about this with my therapist, Dr. Sandra Obi, who has 15 years in family trauma, and the particular patience of someone who understands that the question, but she's still your sister, and the question, but she benefited from what was done to you, can both be true simultaneously and don't resolve each other cleanly. What do you want from the relationship with Chloe? Dr. Obi asked me in one of our sessions a few months after everything settled. I thought about it carefully. I want her to understand what happened, I said. Not so she feels bad, so she knows. So she's not operating in the same architecture for the rest of her life. And your parents? I was quiet for a moment. I don't know, I said. I think I'm still figuring out what I want that to look like. That's an honest answer. It's the only kind I have, I said. My parents are renting an apartment about 20 minutes from where I live. I know this because my father emailed me the address in December, shortly after they moved in a message that was brief and factual and that I read once and did not respond to. I drove past it once. Not deliberately, or not entirely deliberately. The particular half-deliberateness of a decision your body makes before your brain signs off. Small building, maintained but not cared for. The kind of place that is a significant step down from a house you've lived in for 30 years. I sat in my car at the curb for a few minutes. I thought about the diapers line item. I thought about the cruise photographs. I thought about my father's voice on the phone, the performing version, and then the real version, and the specific gap between them. I thought about the fact that I had paid their mortgage for 7 years and they had looked across a table and billed me for existing. Then I thought about Dr. Obi's question and my own answer, and the fact that I am still figuring out what I want the relationship to look like. I drove home. There is a thing that people say about situations like this. Family is complicated. Forgiveness is for you. They're still your parents. And I want to be honest that I have heard all of it, and that it contains truth, and that truth does not automatically produce an outcome. I am 33 years old. I am a director at a firm I have worked very hard to reach. I have an apartment with good light and a filing cabinet with very organized drawers and a therapist I see every other Tuesday, and a life that is, in its current configuration, mine in a way it has never been before. What I don't have is a clean ending. The house is sold. The countersuit produced its intended result. The criminal charges were suspended, and the fraudulent invoices are in a file at Victoria's office that I hope never needs to come out again. The numbers resolved. The family didn't. Families don't resolve. They continue or they don't, and you make choices about what you're willing to continue. And those choices are different for different people with different histories and different damage and different capacity for things. My parents put a price on my childhood. They put it on a spreadsheet, stamped by a law firm, with line items for diapers and emotional wear and tear. What they didn't realize, what I understood, sitting on the floor of my apartment with 10 years of paper spread around me, feeling the door close in my chest with that soft final click, is that when you put a price on something, you give the other person permission to quantify it back. They told me what I was worth to them. I just made sure they understood what they were worth to me. The math in the end was very clear. I had always been the one who kept the receipts.